They're very different, and you know, Renzo going for something that we've seen a little bit of already ourselves with the Shadow Rider Calyrex, but Paul's sticking with that Xerneas.
Yeah, with Renzo, there's a few familiar faces from our side of the broadcast here. You know, you've got that Mienshao once again and Stack Attacker, some kind of less popular choices, but great to see them in action. And of course, Regieleki is back. And I really like kind of when you look at Renzo's side, you've got, again, those kind of two speed options. You've got the speedy Pokemon in the form of Regieleki and the Calyrex, but then slightly slower form of that Stack Attacker. And when you throw it over to Paul Ruiz's side, again, you've got those options. You've got the slow Pokemon in the form of Amoonguss that can be really tricksy with redirection and Spore, putting Pokemon to sleep if Trick Room comes up, for example. But then you've got the Xerneas, and we saw it piloted previously in this broadcast to some and not so successful success, I suppose. And it'll be interesting to see if Paul is going to be able to get the Geomancy up on this occasion.
If there's a Pokemon to help you get Geomancy up, I'm going to say that Amoonguss is probably one of the most iconic at being able to help out. I am interested to see how the Volcarona plays for him and how he's able to use that and bring that to the fore. It's definitely kind of the unique choice on his team a little bit more, so a lot to think about in team preview for both of these players. You know, it kind of goes back to when we saw this matchup before, when we saw the Xerneas against that Shadow Rider Calyrex. Like, you can't let the Xerneas Geomancy for free, because then you're not going to deal the damage required. But if you can shut it down, you can start picking it off easily enough with Astral Barrages and things.
Well, let's see if Renzo does have options to shut down that Xerneas. Let's jump into game one here of this winners round 2 match and see who's going to be victorious from both of these Latin America players. You can see coming out onto the right-hand side for Paul Ruiz, it's going to be that Xerneas and Rillaboom, whereas on Renzo's side, the restricted Pokemon in the form of Calyrex Shadow Rider has come out, but this time paired up with the Incineroar.
Yeah, a lot of games seem to be coming down to just throwing out the restricteds nice and early. I think you have to on a Xerneas team, and it's very kind of respectful to match that with the Shadow Rider and say, you've got your big damage dealer, I've got my big damage dealer. They've then put it next to a fake out option on both sides. We've got to cycle through a bunch of, you know, kind of setting up the board, intimidates grassy terrains as well. So a lot to take in, and a little bit of extra time for both these players to decide how they might want to try and shut each other down.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, if you're the Xerneas here, you're going to want to try and get that Geomancy set up. But you have to watch out from taking lots of that kind of special attacking damage from the Calyrex before you're able to obviously get those special defense boosts from the Geomancy. Renzo making a change, however, Incineroar leaves the field in place of the Rillaboom as the Calyrex goes for the Astral Barrage, being the speediest thing here out on the field, and does a huge chunk of damage to the opposing Xerneas that does indeed go for that Geomancy. Has remained unchecked from any kind of fake out here, so is able to go for the one turn thanks to the Power Herb to get all of those boosts, +2 in special attack, special defense, and in speed as well. So going to be able to outspeed that opposing Calyrex going into the next turn. But of course, Rillaboom joining the field for Renzo, going to be able to apply pressure with something like the fake out and the Grassy Glide to deal some damage in the next turn. Rillaboom, however, going to deal with that Calyrex. Don't worry, Xerneas, I've got you. Going to knock it off out of this game one.
That's a really bad opening turn for Renzo, unfortunately for him. There's not much to be said apart from, you know, look at the way that the restricted Pokemon are standing at the end of the turn. One of them isn't, and the other is set up with a full-on Geomancy boost. That is a really tough predicament to come back from. Yes, you landed a really nice attack down. Yes, you do get the Stack Attacker in. The Stack Attacker might be a bit of an answer here, but, you know, you're gonna have to sit and deal with a couple of turns of the Xerneas just throwing out big damage, and the Xerneas as well. I mean, you can play them safely and protect them through a little bit, so a lot of options. I think Paul just committed to the strategy very, very well, and now it's starting to reap some benefits.
Yeah, and nice here of Renzo to have the Rillaboom out on the field that can just shut down that Xerneas on this turn. The knockoff going to come down into that opposing Stack Attacker, knock off the safety goggles, but deal minimal damage, meaning the Stack Attacker is free to go for this Trick Room. And this is nice in the face of that opposing Xerneas. We've seen how much damage something like a Gyro Ball can do to Xerneas, particularly with kind of the dwindled HP that it's got from the Astral Barrage. It really does put Stack Attacker in a great position against it.
That's the kind of turnaround that Renzo needed, an immediate bounce back. Yes, he didn't get any knockouts. Yes, he didn't put down any damage, but he used his turn with access to Fake Out and the newly incoming Stack Attacker to get himself in a much better position, and that's what you need to stabilize and balance. Now the onus is on Paul to play through this Trick Room. Xerneas does not want to play in the Trick Room. It's so fast. It's really, really well boosted up. But it has to find a way to get through all of these turns without leaving the field so it can take advantage of those boosts when you get back. The nature of Geomancy, the fact you have to set it up properly with a Power Herb, means you're not going to get it again in the late game.
Yeah, Renzo really needs to capitalize on this, particularly having lost his restricted Pokemon. Stakataka going to go for the Rock Slide. Xerneas wisely protecting on this occasion, and of course Incineroar coming in. Actually, coming in so nimbly, it's able to dodge out of the way of that Rock Slide and can apply that Fake Up pressure to the Stakataka to help the Xerneas in that next turn. But Renzo bringing his own Rillaboom out of the action here, so it can come back in a little bit later, and bringing in an Incineroar of his own. So once again, this Incineroar can now apply the Fake Up pressure onto that opposing Xerneas, and you might end up with this kind of stalemate turn here, which for Renzo would be good because then you burn the Fake Out on the opposing Pokemon and can threaten the Xerneas on the next turn afterwards.
I think stalemate turns are actually good for Paul as well, though. He's trying to see to the other side of this Trick Room. So if they just exchange Fake Outs this turn, you know, Incineroar fakes out Xerneas, Incineroar fakes out Stakataka, then it's just kind of this neutral turn where nothing really gets done. And then it's a step closer to the end of Trick Room, which is exactly where Paul wants to be in this one. So might have to slow the game down a little bit to get there, but, you know, it's going to be an option. And he's given up on the boosts.
Yeah, Paul is forced to switch out that boosted Xerneas, but does bring in an Amoonguss, a Pokemon that loves to be in this Trick Room environment, and is happy to take this Fake Out, not going to deal too much damage at all. And Jariball following up from the Stakataka as well. Amoonguss not going to be bothered by that at all. As the Incineroar on Paul's side can also capitalize on the fact that, you know, the Xerneas was looking so vulnerable, it was likely going to be the double target from Renzo there. It can go for that parting shot, come back into its Pokeball, so Paul can use it a little bit later on to throw another Intimidate down, and possibly, again with the Fake Out, burn through some of those Trick Room turns, just like you said, Adam.
Definitely able to try and get through that. But Paul, I'm shocked to see somebody give up on the Xerneas boost. I think he was in an okay position to maybe try and get through the Trick Room, but getting the Amoonguss in the Trick Room really, really big here. Maybe able to start throwing around some spores, landing some sleeps that are going to be much more impactful than having that Xerneas dealing damage at the end. And, you know, if everything's asleep, maybe Paul wants to try for the second Geomancy without the Power Herb. But in the meantime, you know, just get through the Trick Room. And the Amoonguss, yeah, is going to be so important to do that.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I wonder with everything asleep, could there be a second Geomancy? I mean, stranger things have happened in a Pokemon match, but we will have to see. A lot of switching going around here. Rillaboom joins the field for Renzo. It leaves the field for Paul in place of that Incineroar. So again, both these players really switching around, you know, their Pokemon that have the utility to use Fake Out, so that you can either burn through these turns or stop, if you're Renzo, the moves coming out from Paul. You don't want that Amoonguss to be able to go for anything like a Spore, and connecting with the Rock Slide, getting the flinch is certainly what Stakataka was aiming to do there.
Stakataka starting to put in a bit of work, starting to show why it's such an important part of this team, and the Stakataka has really helped Renzo balance up this game after that turn one that was just rotten for him, and he lost his Shadow Rider Calyrex. So it's been really big. The bigger factor I think that's a little bit concerning is how limited its impact has been throughout the Trick Room. Paul has played around it very, very, very well, and has just kept it. You know, yes, Renzo hasn't lost any more Pokemon, but he's also not taken out any. So the Pokemon count is still 4-3 in Paul's favour.
Yeah, it certainly is. And protecting the Stakataka in the back for Xerneas later on, I think, is good here from Renzo. But the Amoonguss is free to go for the Spore. And the Incineroar is going to take that, you know, saving the Stakataka from going to sleep when it would then be vulnerable, particularly as Trick Room has ended. You want to make sure that you've got that Pokemon in the back for later. Incineroar as well coming out here from Renzo, you know, the position at the moment, it's not going to be too worried about, you know, getting KO'd by either Amoonguss or the Incineroar, so it does give Renzo the opportunity to try and burn through one of those sleep turns.
Definitely going to help a little bit, but, you know, switching options are getting limited for Renzo. It's going to be a big ask, and Paul as well has the option to try and just call this switch, and you know, if the Stakataka is left there at the end of the turn, then maybe, you know, it's going to get caught by a Spore, assuming, of course, that he called the Rillaboom leaving the field. It's going to get pretty hard to just sit there, though, as the Incineroar is just applying pressure now.
Yeah, the Incineroar taking a little bit of a nap here for Renzo.
Oh, did it?
As the Amoonguss is free to go for his Spore. Catches in on that Stakataka. This Amoonguss must be so happy right now.
Yeah, the Amoonguss said, yeah, I think you're gonna leave the field. When looking at the Rillaboom and catching it on the way in, really, really important there. Now means that the Trick Room going back up, really not an option for Renzo. So, you know, Paul really trying to help him out, or trying to shut that one down, and the Amoonguss has just been doing such good work.
Yeah, more adjustments coming out here from Paul, you know, retrieving the Incineroar once again. And it does just give Paul the utility to bring out that Xerneas here. Knowing that the Stack Attacker is asleep as well, it's a little bit safer for that Xerneas to join the field. But I wonder how Paul's going to be able to utilize it here. Whether you do want to go for that risky second Geomancy. I mean, you have Amoonguss to help you with some redirection, and you can get some help with the Pollen Puff as well, being able to regain all of that HP. But at the same time, if you're Xerneas, you might just want to start dealing out a little bit of damage. There's certainly a few options for Paul. It just depends how brave and bold he wants to be.
He's going to have to use it effectively, and getting rid of this Stack Attacker, I think, before it wakes up and sets up a Trick Room is kind of the key here. So maybe a little bit greedy to try and set up, you know, the non-power Geomancy. But let's not rule it out. Let's just leave that one on the table. But keeping that Stack Attacker in line, really the focal point now. And I think just starting to throw down Dazzling Gleams and Moonblasts is probably the preferred option for the Xerneas, just while everything's asleep. It would be a big play. Renzo really needs something to wake up this turn to start fighting back. You know, he needs to land Flare Blitz on that Amoonguss, needs to be able to gyro ball the Xerneas, and the Xerneas is just kind of there as a bit of bait as it leaves the field already.
Yeah, Xerneas leaves the field. We're talking about all the options that Paul could use it for. We didn't really mention, you know, retreating it, bringing that Incineroar onto the field, throw down another Intimidate, and weaken this Stack Attacker a little bit further. Incineroar, for Renzo, though, is able to wake up, goes for the Flare Blitz, and I think if you're Renzo, you want to try and deal with that Amoonguss, but instead goes into what was the Xerneas. Incineroar going to be able to take that really, really well, as the Amoonguss goes for the Grass Knot, targeting down into that very heavy Stack Attacker. Not going to appreciate falling over that Grass Knot indeed, and is still going to be taking a nap as well, so is not allowed the opportunity to retaliate.
Really nice little mix-up from Paul there on the Amoonguss's moveset. Being able to deal good damage with the Grass Knot in a format like this makes so much sense. If you think about the things it can hit, you can hit Kyogres, you can hit these Stack Attackers, even the Groudons that are all very, very heavy. And there's no Dynamax to mess with the weight-related rules, so you're always going to be able to use it. Really nice adaptation, and I think a very heads-up piece of team building from Paul Ruiz.
Yeah, Amoonguss helping out once again, going for that Pollen Path into its partner Incineroar here. Just going to regain some HP from the Incineroar, and obviously going into the opposing Incineroar with the Fake Out. The Amoonguss doesn't have to worry about taking any Fire-type moves in this turn, or anything from that Stack Attacker, as it is still taking a little bit of a nap.
Yeah, the Stack Attacker struggling to get involved in this game. It looks like Renzo realizes where this game is going, even though there's still a lot of Pokemon left. Just throwing the towel in on that one. I mean, Paul still had all 4 of his Pokemon remaining and was in a pretty controlling position throughout the battle. So Renzo clearly thinks he's learned enough from this game and just wants to bounce on into game number 2.
Yeah, Amoonguss was just so disruptive in that game, whether it was going for Spores and putting Renzo's Pokemon asleep, or actually kind of negating the damage that Renzo had been able to deal to Paul's Pokemon by going for that Pollen Puff. So it was actually great to see the Amoonguss being utilized so well, both in and outside of Trick Room, and it really was kind of the star Pokemon on Paul's team in that game 1.
Yeah, it did the work, and looking at it in team preview, it looked like it was going to be impactful. I mean, Paul got an amazing turn early on, being able to take the knockout, getting the Geomancy set up, everything just worked for him so well. But then he kind of kept the advantage. It wasn't as aggressive, it wasn't trying to take knockouts. Really important to remember, I believe it's turn 2, where he knocks off the Stack Attacker, the knockoff dropped the safety goggles, and that meant later on the Amoonguss was able to put it to sleep. So really good bit of forward thinking there from Paul, and I think we're in for a really good game 2.
Well, let's jump into game 2 and see exactly how it's going to play out. I absolutely loved the fact that you just brought up the safety goggles there, really again showing that forward thinking, and I wonder if it's something that Renzo is going to be able to try and avoid happening to his Stack Attacker in this game. We can see the leads coming out though, Renzo going for the Incineroar and the Calyrex, whereas Paul Ruiz has gone for the Xerneas once again, leading out here with the Rillaboom.
Yep, and he's got the faster Fake Outer as well in the Rillaboom. That's going to be able to kind of keep the pressure over onto this Incineroar. And Renzo last time didn't even go for it. He just said, you know what, you've got the advantage here. That's fine. I'm a switch this one out. That was taken advantage of by the Rillaboom, just going after the Shadow Rider Calyrex with the knockoff. And that's something that I think Renzo is going to have to respect and try and play around a little bit better. You know, either throw down a Fake Out, get it in there and stop everything going Paul's way. Or, you know, just get the Calyrex out of there. It's not safe looking at the knockoff that you know is a present on that Rillaboom.
Yeah, definitely. You need to make sure your Calyrex is better preserved. I mean, Renzo did phenomenally in that game one, despite losing it early, to be able to kind of sort of grind back a little bit. But it's certainly easier if you're able to preserve it for later on in the match. And I wouldn't be surprised to see it leaving the field here, knowing that that Rillaboom has that sort of offensive pressure, or maybe going for a protect or something in this turn. But instead, Renzo switching out the Incineroar and bringing the Rillaboom into the fray, as Rillaboom does go for the fake out into what was the Incineroar. So don't have to worry about any knockoffs coming its way. The Calyrex able to go for the Astral Barrage into both these Pokemon does, again, a decent chunk to both the Xerneas and the Rillaboom, but Xerneas free to go for that Geomancy.
The Xerneas is the really big focal point once again, and yes, Renzo does still have his Shadow Rider Calyrex at the end of this turn, which is something that, you know, is going to be a change from the previous game, but you know, is it worth it when it could just get picked off very, very easily? The Xerneas and Paul in general know what's coming. The Rillaboom's here. Yes, it can fake me out. Just protect for a turn. You know, just be safe. Keep it nice and safe, and then take advantage of your Geomancy. Unless Renzo starts running through this team where he's always got a fake out on there to just keep that Xerneas down, you know, similar to how we saw a couple games earlier on. And even thinking back to his Player Cup 4 run, how he was always keeping Intimidates available. That kind of playstyle, I think, needs to come to the fore here with the fake out. You know, being able to say, okay, I always have a fake out on the field. I've got Rillaboom, I've got Incineroar, and just keep that Xerneas down. Because if Paul finds an opening that, you know, we didn't even see the Xerneas going for attacks last time. If he finds that opening, this game could turn very nasty very quickly for Renzo.
Yeah, Renzo does have the utility to go for the fake out, and I think one thing as well we haven't really touched on is that Calyrex. You know, I've said it could play a little bit more defensively, but it is carrying that choice scarf, so it's going to be locked into this Astral Barrage. Doesn't have the option or utility to maybe switch to being defensive unless Renzo just wants to retrieve it into its Pokeball at this stage. Xerneas, however, just going to go straight for the protect, and that's why I like this play here from Paul. You're protecting your Xerneas not only from the fake out, but from taking any Astral Barrage damage, and bringing in the Incineroar as well. Well, it practically laughs in the face of an Astral Barrage. It's able to take that much better than the Rillaboom would have been able to, and then of course apply pressure going forward into this next turn into that opposing Rillaboom with something like a fake out, or again can potentially try it with maybe a Dark type move to threaten down into that opposing Calyrex.
The Calyrex not feeling very safe, and even if it connects an attack onto this Xerneas, I'm just not sure if it's going to be able to do anywhere near enough damage because of the boosts that came through as part of the Geomancy. The Rillaboom perfectly handled in that turn, saying, yep, you've got fake out, that's fine. Let's just protect our way through that. Really, really smart play by Paul, and this is kind of the same control, I think. Even though the Pokemon account isn't wildly ahead, it's actually just even right now. It's just a very well-controlled game, and it's really been all about using your fake outs so well. You know, this Calyrex with the choice scarf that you talked about earlier, yeah, it's just not going to be able to get involved, and we're back to where we were in game number 1.
Yeah, it's not going to be able to beat the boost on that Xerneas with the +2 speed from the Geomancy, able to pick up the solid KO thanks to the +2 special attack as well going into that Moonblast. So once again, Renzo does lose his restricted Pokemon, but you can see in the back we've got that Stack Attacker, and it was certainly a Pokemon that applied a lot of challenge and threat to that opposing Xerneas in the previous game.
Yeah, the Stack Attacker is once again the focal point of this team, and it's come in. The Xerneas is on the board. The Xerneas is there showing that it's ready to get knocked out by a Gyro Ball if you can connect one. But, you know, Paul just playing it smart, saying, you know what, I don't want you to knock it out, and just needs to try and maybe weave in another attack before it gets felled. Obviously, is going to be respectful of the Incineroar and the fake out, which has just been so important. I do think it's really interesting, and over the course of the day, how important fake out's been because of the lack of Dynamax, and this is a game that's a really good example of how impactful it is in this format.
Yeah, no, that's so true. We've seen it on Incineroars, we've seen it on Rillabooms, and I think all of the players, again, they are such high caliber, they know how to utilize Pokemon to the best of their abilities. Being able to constantly pivot these Pokemon, whether it's with U-turn, parting shot, or things like that, even just hard switches, just making sure that they've always got the fake out option there to shut down the offensive pressure of the opposing Pokemon has been expertly demonstrated in all of these sets. But you can see Incineroar continuing to demonstrate it here for the fake out into that opposing Rillaboom, and Xerneas going for the substitute in the face of this Stack Attacker. Absolutely love this play from Paul Ruiz. Trick Room goes up from Stack Attacker, but it's going to have to hit twice into that Xerneas to be able to deal the damage that it really wants to do.
He's sacrificed Dazzling Gleam, and I think that sacrifice is about to be worth it. This Xerneas is going to be so hard to get rid of now, and if it can take advantage of the time that the substitute buys it, he's going to be in a really good position, even in this Trick Room. We haven't seen Paul's last Pokemon yet, and if that's the Amoonguss, it could get really kind of dicey really quickly for Renzo here, but really nicely done to sneak that one in when it looked like a bit of a dire situation, I think, for the Xerneas. You know, well, Trick Room's going up, I'm going to get Gyro Balled in the following turn. Nope, set up the substitute, put yourself in a great position.
That's the thing, the Xerneas here can just go for a Protect, which would, you know, obviously then protect the substitute as well, and it allows Paul the opportunity to bring in a Pokemon from the back, whether it was going to be that Amoonguss that we saw do so well in Trick Room previously, or the Incineroar, as he has opted for, to throw down and Intimidate against that opposing Stack Attacker. Xerneas is quite wisely going to go for that Protect here, just burning through a turn of Trick Room and protecting itself while the Fake Out Pokemon joined the field. Stack Attacker is, however, going to go for that Rock Slide. Of course, not going to go into that Xerneas at all, but we'll catch the Incineroar on the switch in, but the Intimidate paying off here, and Incineroar going to be able to take that really well. However, Renzo's Flare Blitz as well, targeting down into that Xerneas, no double up into the Incineroar, so it gets in relatively for free.
Yeah, it's a decent turn for Paul, being able to avoid that Rock Slide, you know, and keep your substitute up is really exactly where he needs to be. Similar game to game number one. I mean, he did switch out before instead of trying to work through the Trick Room, but he's definitely got time with that substitute to sit on the field and get to the other side of Trick Room without giving up his boosts. Clearly he can win without it, but, you know, buying time with these fake outs is going to be really, really important.
Yeah, well, Stack Attacker going for that body press, targeting down into the Incineroar, and does manage to remove it from the field. That pesky Pokemon constantly switching in with the Intimidates and Fake Outs, no more. And of course, Stack Attacker going to get that benefit of a defense beast boost as well. You know, not going to help it in the face of a Xerneas, but potentially with the Rillaboom, that could come in handy a little bit later on. The Incineroar on Renzo's side, however, going to be able to survive the Moonblast coming out from that Xerneas, and will be able to eat its berry as well. The Citrus Berry regaining a little bit of HP for the Incineroar here, but Paul unable to pick up the KO against it.
That Paul not getting the KO, but weaving in good damage with the Xerneas. A turn where it looks like Xerneas might protect, just decides, you know what, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to land that Moonblast instead and start dealing that damage. Yeah, you lose your Incineroar, but as Trick Room is trying to get worked through, the Amoonguss gets to come in. I think that's a fine trade if you're Paul, and now the Amoonguss can cause the same problems that it did in game number one. Put everything to sleep, and then just allow that Xerneas, even in the Trick Room, to just throw down Moonblasts and start taking knockouts.
That's the thing, Amoonguss can really get up to some trouble here, but you got to remember the Stack Attacker still has its safety goggles on her at the moment. It's not going to be a target for that Amoonguss with any of those spores, but the partner Pokemon could potentially be a little bit vulnerable. But I think Amoonguss's main thing here could be to go for that redirection. The Gyro Ball, however, going to target down into the substitute of the Xerneas, and of course that will be enough to be able to break it due to the fact that it's dealing super effective damage, but I'm not sure that the Incineroar is going to be able to do anything, as Amoonguss is going to be able to put it straight to sleep with that spore, just protecting that Xerneas a little bit. The substitute obviously allowed it to bypass any damage from the Stack Attacker, leaving the Xerneas free to go for this Moonblast, targeting down into the Incineroar. It's going to be enough to pick up the KO this time.
Yep, Incineroar comfortably dealt with, and that's quite big actually for Paul. Yeah, he had to put it to sleep to make sure he didn't get caught with the fake out, but that does force Renzo down to his last two. You know, the Rillaboom is going to be a bit of a problem for the Amoonguss to deal with, can't put it to sleep. And of course, the Stack Attacker hasn't been hit with a knockoff yet, so not able to just put that one to sleep. But like you mentioned, being able to just redirect the Gyro Balls away, you know, keep that, even redirecting Fake Outs away, allow that Xerneas to just throw down Moonblasts and just try and take those knockouts. The Amoonguss is about to have to run interference as it can't get up to its normal sleep shenanigans.
That's the thing, we've seen pretty much all of Amoonguss's move pool here, so we know that it can't really do, basically cannot touch this Rillaboom at all. The Grass Knot we know can do some decent damage to that opposing Stack Attacker, but it might want to be able to help out its buddy Xerneas. But while Xerneas is protecting, it could be the opportunity for that Amoonguss to try and deal some damage to the Stack Attacker. Stack Attacker, however, going to go for the body press first of all. Amoonguss able to take that really well, as it does indeed go for the Grass Knot in the terrain down into that Stack Attacker and takes it down to below 50% damage. Rillaboom is going to go for the U-turn here into Amoonguss, just try and chip away at it, but of course, due to the fact Renzo only has 2 Pokemon, the U-turn isn't going to remove the Rillaboom from the field.
I mean, the Amoonguss still looks pretty healthy to me. Even after getting correctly double targeted, Renzo, you know, calling that Protect on the Xerneas spot on, saying, all right, I'll just take this time to go after the Amoonguss. The Amoonguss just took that so well, and I think even though it can't put things to sleep, it's going to be able to just deal the damage that it wants to. The Grassy Glide just not enough, and here we go. Xerneas just gets to start attacking. Now that Trick Room's over.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks to the Grass Knot previously, the Moonblast is going to be enough to pick up the KO against it. Amoonguss, it definitely was there to help the stack attack and not the Rillaboom, but it's still going to try do a little bit of damage to that opposing Rillaboom. And I mean, we saw how much the Grassy Glide did do to the Xerneas in that turn. Did deal, a pretty decent chunk to it at that stage. But Paul does have this kind of Pokemon advantage at the moment.
Yeah, Paul definitely in the driving seat, 3-1. Is he going to be able to find enough damage onto that Xerneas? And while you're doing that, what's the rest of the team doing? The Amoonguss can't really do anything to you right now. So then we end up with this Rillaboom versus Rillaboom situation. And I think once you've kind of figured out each other's items, Paul just setting up for a nice, easy turn, getting his own Fake Outer in, being able to take that Grassy Glide, and then just saying, you know what, I don't think you have a way to protect, so I'm just going to Fake Out Moonblast you.
Yeah, that's the thing, going for the Protect on the Xerneas. We've got Fake Out this turn. We know from kind of the sneak peek we've got here with Renzo's team, we know that Rillaboom doesn't have the utility to be able to protect, so the Fake Out on a Moonblast is just such a nice option here from Paul, and I think you can see that Renzo has figured it out as well and can kind of see the end game state here, meaning that Paul Ruiz is going to be the victor over Renzo Navarro.